Hey, good morning, everyone. Mark Westcott here today with Kelley Clements. Hey, Kelley.
Hello, Mark. It's so good to see you.
So, everyone watching, Kelley's over in Chicago, and Kelley and I just go so far back to strategic coach days, dream manager, the Lifebook, and so on. And so we've known each other for 100 years, but haven't spoken probably for 10 or 12 years. So it's great to see you this morning, Kelley.
Yeah, you too. And you know what? I was thinking we saw each other at Colby once too recently. Well,
Colby was probably down in where was that?
But in Phoenix.
Phoenix, Arizona. That was the last time we probably caught up with each other. Catching a bus to the airport, I remember. And things have changed in your life significantly since then. So what I'd like to do to share with everyone today in the Power of Great Questions is basically talk about the things that have happened in your life that have led you to where you are. But more importantly, what are the questions we want to get to? What are the questions that you ask your clients, your customers, your friends that elicit the greatest response and create the greatest value for them? Because as a run-up, Kelley, you and I both know it's not what you tell people, it's the questions you ask which get them to think about unraveling the answers themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. I hear that's a great question often. So I'm really looking forward to talking about this with you.
Well, obviously you have a few, but look, let's before we get to that, let's just talk about what's brought you to this point in life. We first met when you were working with strategic coach Dan Sullivan in Chicago, and good to see you still in Chicago. So what was it with, I guess, what attracted you to Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, and what were the things that you learned there that have created the greatest value for you in your life, apart from everything?
I can look back to that time with Sullivan and strategic coach as the most pivotal time in my life. I didn't even know that coaching was an industry when I got to that interview, and I was a recreation major. Like I wanted to be around concerts and parties for my career, and be where the fun was. So when I got to that interview with strategic coach and I was learning about what their concepts were and what their mission was and who they were working with, I took to it like a fish to water. Like it made so much sense to me. And so being getting into the coaching industry and having my first exposure to it be with strategic coach was really powerful because it exposed me to what was possible. It was the first time I was really in a room with successful entrepreneurs like that. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial lifestyle, appreciating coming and going as we pleased.
Yep.
I didn't get to see business owners working on their business to the extent that they did, and it really lit an entrepreneurial fire in me. Not only for what a business could look like, but what an entrepreneurial family could look like. And at that time I was married, and I came home from work every day just fired up about what my clients were doing and really wanting to take that avenue with our family.
Yep.
And actually it's where I learned one of my biggest lessons in relationship is how important it is not to compare, because I would come I'd come home, or at first it sounded like engaging dinner conversation, and then after months and years of that, it started to come across as a comparison and what wasn't happening for our family, which sadly ended in divorce for us. And so it was a big lesson for me of really not only like how to engage in family and appreciate what we have, but also to get really clear that it was okay to want what I wanted.
There's a book about that, evidently.
There is. So yeah, that's why I look back and I can say that strategic coach changed everything for me.
Yeah. And for very positive, in a very positive way. Definitely. And then we ran across each other again when I signed up for the Lifebook program. Mm-hmm. And but before we get to that, tell me what's your Colby profile, because I laughed when you sent that email this morning.
I have a 6573, so I'm kind of a mediator, but really with a quick start slant.
Yep, no, that's good. Do you want to talk about the question you sent me this morning and what quick starts do? Quick starts just look at the executive summary, Kelley, don't they?
So I was
two lines of the email.
Myself. I had a little break right before our call. It's 4:00. It's late afternoon for me, and I had a little break earlier, and I was like, I'm going to get ready for this podcast interview. And I looked and I'm like, oh, they're going to send me a link. So I'm like, just send it, I'll be a little bit late. And he's like, yeah, it's already there. So when quick starts prepare, we tend to go south.
That's right. We need someone helping us. But let's talk about Lifebook as well, because that was a great part of your life as well, wasn't it? It was a 3 or 4 day course I think I went to, where we sit there and are very introspective in regard to creating your plan for your life.
Yeah, Lifebook. When you came through, it was in the format of a 4-day program that took place in Chicago in like an ultra luxe, comfortable, luxurious lounge. And they were 4 intense days. We had 11, sometimes 12-hour days. And what that is, Lifebook is really introspective way of identifying what success looks like to you. And so, at this stage of the game, a lot of us have been exposed to very conventional ways of what success is or what it looks like. And Lifebook is just an opportunity to sit down and redefine what excellence and success and a really high level of living looks like for each individual in 12 categories of life. And so, and it talks, the thing that I learned really useful in Lifebook was the interconnectivity, how closely each of the different categories in our life supported and emulsified other areas. And I use that every day in my coaching. I call it referred pain. If there's something that's not quite clicking in your business, chances are there's something going off a little bit off with either your health and fitness or your love relationship, because those categories are very connected. If you're having a challenge with parenting, there might be something off with your character. And so learning the concept of interconnectivity was really useful for me in my coaching, and just knowing how important it is to maintain our version of our personal success across all 12 areas of life.
That's really profound, Kelley, because some people think about making sure they get one part of their life right, and probably to do that, they're ignoring other parts of their life, like if you're focusing on. I always talk about the 3-legged stool, health, relationships, and money, and which is the most important. You ask people, okay, you're sitting on a 3-legged stool. Health, relationship, and money are the 3 legs. Which is the most important? And they all say health. Or relationships probably comes first or second with health, and money is kind of like no. Money comes third. And then you say, okay, well, where do you spend most of your time? And all the time is spent on the money, at the expense of the health and at the expense of the relationship. So people tend to have everything, sort of back to front, don't they, in regard to the way they focus on what's important in their life. And,
absolutely.
And I mean, that in itself is a good question, which is the most important of those few. But uncovering the connectivity between all the different areas in your life, Kelley, that's a great part of what you're doing now, isn't it, in helping people with their coaching?
Yeah. So now I'm completely on my own, and I have a coaching practice where I help entrepreneurs, but I also have a focus on their spouse and their love relationship and what's happening in their marriage or their partnership, because those 2 relationships just go hand in hand. And after my divorce, I was in a relationship with another entrepreneur. And so I have a unique perspective of what it's like to be the more driven, ambitious person in a relationship. And then, the pendulum swung completely in the other direction, where I got exposed to what it was like to be in partnership with somebody who was more ambitious and more driven, and understanding the dynamics of both people in the relationship has made me, I think, offer a unique perspective to entrepreneurial couples, so I can help diffuse what the other one might be feeling.
Yeah. Before we go further with that, Kelley, I just want to talk about the Colby, the work you've done with Colby and so on as well. Are you still using that a lot in your process? Is that a key part of what you do with your clients?
Yeah, it's not. I don't use it with every client. I bring it in when I know that it's going to help give the couple some context about some of the things some of the challenges that they're up against. I just had a really great Colby call. Actually, I have a couple that they're former CIA. They're both former CIA operatives, and they started
secret squirrel stuff.
Totally. But they started a business called Everyday Spy, and they had never been exposed to Colby. So it was super fun to talk, like to open that conversation with them of like, no, actually this is, one person's not anal and one person's not reckless. Both of you just need different things. And so diffusing that emotional charge that sometimes we can get tangled in with our partner Colby is definitely useful in doing that when it's appropriate.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a plug here for Kathy Colby. It's kolbe.com, and do the A index. You know, when I joined Strategic Coach 25 years ago, whatever it was, that was the first thing they got us to do back in the day, wasn't it? Was to do our Colby profile. And I always used to wonder why some people were just jerks about life. And, you know, like, why did they need to have all this information before they did anything? Why couldn't they just go out and do it? And of course, I'm a 10 quick start, Kelly. So, you know.
What's your fact finder?
I'm a 2, 3, 10, 2. So I'm 2 fact find. You know, I just need like executive. I would have read less of that email we sent you than you did.
The irony of a 2 fact finder having a podcast called The Power of Great Questions.
Absolutely, because what I do is I love to ask great questions, and because, you know, and record the information so that, you know, we know how to help people as best we can. And you know, Dan's question, the R factor question, it was just one of the, you know, the things that turned on lights. I use that all the time. Still, that's one of my, you know, if you've ever seen my the videos we did, the book we wrote, The Power of Great Questions, you'll see that one of my number one question is the R factor question, the relationship question that Dan taught us. And you know, that just is so important. Yeah. Whether you're employing someone, you're starting a relationship, or whatever it is. When I've dated girls and I've asked them that question, they kind of look at me and I say, I need to know.
We need to be going to the same spot.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, Colby, knowing your Colby profile, and especially in what you do, I can see what you mean. It's just so important in relationships too, to get that, to get an understanding, and as you say, put things into context in regard to why people are the way they are, why some people are anal about the information they need, and there's others like me that's just like, come on, give me the bottom line.
Right? Yeah. You know, I call it relationship junk food when we fight about things, about the way that our partner does something when it's not like us. It's like, there's no point in fighting about it. It's factory installed in them, and that's kind of just turns into relationship junk food when you get into those kind of arguments.
Which are just pointless, because no one's going to ever change, are they?
Right.
Hey, now, I'm actually going to read this, Kelly. This is a great testimonial. I took this off your website, and people who are watching this, I just want them to. I met Kelly 7 years ago through Lifebook. Kelly was my facilitator, and one of those people in life you just know will be in your life for life. I recently participated in her inaugural retreat. It was an intimate setting filled with a thoughtful, engaging agenda, which enabled our group of fascinating women to build an immense bond. I was so impressed with Kelly's ability to facilitate deep conversations while keeping the environment safe and encouraging. Kelly is one of the most authentic people I've met, I agree. She has a wonderful mix of life experience and genuine devotion to personal growth, which you are immediately immersed in the moment you are in her presence. I am grateful for having experienced this retreat. It was time absolutely well spent and needed. I look forward to your next one. And that was from Karen, and that just is such a great testimonial for you, Kelly. You know, you obviously make such a difference in people's lives. So now I want to give you the opportunity to talk about what it is that you do, because I know you work specifically with women, don't you, as a starting point, and so on. I'm picking up.
The starting point is generally men. Generally, maybe 60-40 entrepreneurial men.
Yep.
That reach out to me because, you know, there's something going on in the marriage, and typically the entrepreneur is more used to reaching out for coaching or help because it's what we do. We have workshops and seminars and blogs and blah blah blah, and generally the spouse isn't really accustomed to that, and so the on-ramp generally happens with the entrepreneur. Although a couple times it has been the women that have been up in the middle of the night Googling, like, how do I, like, what's happening with my entrepreneurial husband. So I'm most often working with both parties. I have a couple of strictly executive coaches where I don't work with their spouses, or clients where I don't work with their spouses, but it's very couple centric.
Okay. What is the name of your business? Is it just Kelley Clements, or I was kind of...
It's called The Entrepreneur, spelled with the word renew.
Yep.
So it's, my website's Kelley Clements, but the name of my business is called The Entrepreneur.
Okay, so tell me, how are you engaging people in the first place? They're hearing from you through referral and so on. Is that kind of how work starts with you?
Yeah. Yep. My entire calendar is filled with referrals. And I have 2 random Google searches that just joined in the last quarter. I think COVID really helped people get really serious about not kicking the can down the road and getting really serious about making sure that their marriage and their home life wasn't falling by the wayside. Early on in COVID, there was a big uptick because there was, the normal distractions of travel or conventions or workshops, and those normal distractions weren't there anymore, and so people didn't have anywhere to run from what wasn't happening at home.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because they had to spend more time with each other, and I guess that just amplified. And I mean, that's been proven in divorce statistics and mental health issues and
Sure.
and all those sorts of things. So yeah, people would have been looking for someone like you. But let's get to the crunch of this. What are the sorts of questions when you're dealing with people? What are the key questions you're asking to elicit the greatest responses to help people, make their own, I guess, discovery in regard to what they need to do to make changes in their lives?
Yeah. The one question I always ask consistently is, what did you love the most about your partner when you met them? And then I take them back, like, when you guys first met, what did you love the most? And the reason I do that is the qualities that we originally fall in love with our partners are generally over time the things that really start to drive us the most crazy. The biggest complaint that they have is actually just the different side of the same coin of the traits that they love.
Yep.
Or that they loved once upon a time. And so when I can get them to flip the perspective and see that it's not necessarily a weakness that their partner has, it's a trait. Sometimes it presents as a strength, and sometimes it presents as a weakness. And so when I can get them to see that this trait also serves them, it helps to take some of the weight out of this flaw that they think their partner has or that the relationship has. And the other thing is that, especially with entrepreneurs, the traits that make us really successful in business can be really hard to live with at home. And so if we're driven in business, we're control freaks at home. If we're creative in business, we're manic at home. If we're well connected in business, we're spread too thin at home. And so going back to that perspective of, yes, your partner does have this trait. Yes, there are times that it works against you. And once upon a time, it was the thing you loved the most. And so that kind of starts to soften the heart a little bit, where we can start to get some real work done because they're more vulnerable, they're more open, they can remember how we got here in the first place.
That's a really good question, Kelley, and because it's very true. You've got to take people back, haven't you, and say, okay, well, what attracted you in the first place? But the other things you were talking about there, like, you can be very gregarious, you can be outgoing and always be chatting to people in a work environment, and sometimes come home and you're just out of energy, for example, and you lose so you've really become, in some ways, a relationship counselor is kind of what you've become, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that is useful for the spouse to hear, is because a lot of times spouses feel like the business gets the best of them, I get the rest of them. And when we can talk, and that is where Colby comes in handy, is I can talk about that battery drain. They're not faking it. Like, they really are depleted.
They're worn out.
Yeah. And it also gives a little bit more perspective to the entrepreneur of, okay, I can see where this happens. They are getting the rest of me. It's time to put some play and some higher priority of really high quality together time. Because if we're on the weekends or the nights and I'm always tired, they are getting the worst version of me, which is why I have a huge focus on play for entrepreneurial couples and all couples. Because when we have that sense of play, again, it takes us back to that beginning stage of our relationship. That thing that got us to the altar is the dating relationship, which is filled with play. And it's in that carefree timelessness where love grows. It's in that carefree timelessness where we get to see our partner in their best light. And so having really high quality free time, for especially...
There's that word. Free time.
Tell me more.
No, that's right, and that's what I was reflecting on before you came on was your time at Strategic Coach, your time with Dream Manager and Lifebook and so on has just really put you in a spectacular place, hasn't it? Because all those concepts are coming together for what it is that you're doing now, and you're absolutely right. Free time. I mean, you tend to meet your partner when you're doing free time stuff, don't you? So, and you spend a lot more free time with them in the early days, and then you go, okay, I've got to get back to work now and be an entrepreneur again, and you can't lose that time with them. One of the things I was looking at on your website, Kelley, was that you talk about the importance of the evolving needs of driven women in relationships and the whole concept of role reversal and so on. So are you getting a lot of work, a lot of communication with women who are the entrepreneurs, and that must be a tough situation, I guess, for the guys in those relationships?
Yeah, yes. So I do have
Be more specific, yes.
where the entrepreneur is the woman, and that is a completely different dynamic in the relationships. And so there's a lot of conversations about masculine and feminine energy in those relationships, in those conversations. And it's formed the foundation of what my second book is going to be. And it's the concept of the alpha. And when the woman is the alpha and she has a lot of masculine energy, it takes up the entire spectrum, right? It forces her man, presuming she's in heteronormative relationship, to take more of a feminine role. And because of the dynamics of a man and woman relationship, like the man might want to like buck up and be like fight back, but he can't because she's a woman. He can't figure out if he wants to punch her or what. So he just does nothing and shrinks. And so, now the complaint of the driven female tends to be like, he can't keep up. He can't meet my needs. He doesn't understand. Like, I don't respect him because he's not showing up, and he's not showing up because we're taking their space in the relationship. And so I talk about it in terms of like, it's not necessarily an alpha with a beta. That's kind of the dynamics we think of, is that the partner of the entrepreneur has to be the follower. It's the concept of an alpha and an omega. So if you're in partnership with a really driven person, it is very important to maintain your own sense of personality, your own sense of drive, your own sense of individuality, because if you lose that key sense of individuality, it is very easy to feel like you're getting steamrolled in the relationship, and then they lose their identity. And so we're left with the shell of a partner. And so when I talk about omega, I talk about it as maintaining your own personal excellence. Like, your partner can be as driven as they want, and having personal boundaries around what your area of excellence looks like keeps you alive in the relationship. It keeps you on that spectrum where you have a space in participating, because you still have a voice, you still have opinions that aren't getting steamrolled all the time. Because I think for an alpha, initially it's a charge, but over time in a personal relationship, that's where that loss of respect and connection goes away, because we can't find our partner. We've etched them out of the equation. And I say this as a more driven person. And so we're really making sure that we keep space for them in the relationship is important when there's that, I call it the ambition gap that's at play in entrepreneurial relationships.
And you named that. I love that, the ambition gap. I'm sitting here while you're talking about this, and there's a lady that I know very well that is very, very driven in her business, and her marriage failed as a result, I guess, of exactly what you're talking about. And I think her husband really struggled with knowing his place where he fitted in, and probably felt emasculated in some ways as well. So, I was just hearing you, and I thought, wow, that totally explains what happened in this relationship. So are you, a lot of the stuff I see on your website, Kelley, is very much about, groups of ladies and so on. Is your target market, so to speak, looking at women who are successful in business, looking at female entrepreneurs, and or are you?
You know what? I think I have such a heart for the women, because I think my own journey as a woman, like especially as a driven woman, I had to get really good at understanding that my femininity was a power, because I spent so much time in the masculine with the drive and the go and the, sometimes like that comes across as too critical. And so I I had to address that. I had a belief that femininity was weak. You throw like a girl, you run like a girl, like all this programming that was very prevalent for,
Don't keep doing it. We want women to be women.
Right. But I think that somewhere in my professional arc that got molded out. And so I think, and it's a big breakthrough for a lot of the women that I start these conversations with. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like our femininity, like we have an unfair advantage with our intuition and our softness and our ability to listen. So when you talk about great questions and, really being able to ask a great question, when I'm thinking about my questions, I'm not listening to what they're saying. I'm listening to what they're not saying. Like I'm with them as they're telling me stories. And as soon as there's a gap in the information or the timeline or the story, I know that there's something there, which is normally the thing that we need to get into because they avoided it. And that's intuition. If I'm following a script or like a coaching process, I miss all that. And so that's my femininity at play. And
absolutely.
Helping
you have an unfair advantage, Kelley.
I know, and I get it. And for so long we thought it was a liability. And so I think that's why I have such a heart for the women, spouse or entrepreneur, is really getting comfortable with sinking into that femininity and using it as an advantage.
Okay, you've given us one great question, and that was the question about what was it that attracted you to that person in the first place. So taking people back. What's another question or another couple of questions you've used, Kelley, that you think has created the greatest value for the people that you deal with? And I know you've got hundreds, and the trouble is they just come naturally to you, and you don't think about them, you just ask them. So what are a couple maybe that you ask people that people who are watching this might go, wow, it's helping me?
I've heard a couple of stock questions that I will share, but again, it's really when we're really active listening, which means we're in the story with them. When we're really in the story with them and there's that gap, that's where my most profound questions come from. And I can tell I've hit a nerve because it's like they pull back a little bit or there's like a And so I guess a way to say that is, what are you hoping I don't ask you? Like, what's the question you hope I avoid or that you hope I miss?
I'm going to squirm at.
And you have in a safe space, and that's a little bit factory installed with me. Like in a container where you have a safe space and good, safe rapport.
Yep.
That can be a really powerful question. I wouldn't do that to somebody I've just met. Yeah. Maybe I would, but that's where the most use is. Like that's where all their growth is going to happen, is by this area that they keep skirting around. I was on a call with a prospect a couple weeks ago, and she told me that one of her favorite questions that somebody asked her was, what would she said, she told her you had a coach before, and she told the coach, I didn't know. And the coach said, okay, but if you knew, what would the answer be? And so that sounded, that stayed with me as something of like a clever way of getting them past their own head trash to say what the answer is. A lot of times I'll ask where their confidence is leaking or draining, because if we can shore up that confidence, anything is possible. That's another Sullivan, right? Confidence is the electricity of life. And so if I can ask them where their confidence is leaking or where they have a confidence drain, that's normally another place I can get a lot of good leverage with them, is because we can patch that confidence drain. And once their confidence gets back up, right?
Actually, just before, and I forget what word you used, but it just took me straight back to Dan as well, was the procrastination. What things are you procrastinating about?
Yeah.
When you wake up every day on your goal? I remember, even going to coach every quarter, you'd write down your list for the next 90 days and so on. And I kept having the same couple of things turned up all. Every time I wrote the list, the same two things were on there, and I'm going, there's an issue here, isn't there? And that's, what is it that we're procrastinating about? And gee, if you can identify that and just grab it by the throat, that's where you're going to make huge progress as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You sound like you asked that, but I think it was in a different way. But it's, the word I'd use is procrastination. But
great. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. And sorry, you were about to say something else. Kelley?
I think the other question I ask, and this is in the family of the R factor DOS, is what keeps you up at night. Like what's the worst case scenario of something? Because a lot of times if we can get past the worst case scenario, and like when we really dial it down, like what's the actual worst case scenario, and we can get good with that, it's easier to start on something.
Yep, absolutely. Kelley, our time is up, sadly. I could chat to you for ages and ages. So, but quickly, when if people want to talk further with you, tell them what's the easiest way to connect with you.
You can go to my website, is kelleyclements.com, and on that website there's a link to book a call with me. It'll take you straight to my calendar link, and you can schedule a call at your convenience. My email address is on there too. The calendar availability might be a little limited in Australia, but if anybody does want to talk further, I'd be happy to open up some evening hours so that I can connect with your audience at an appropriate time for them, so that you guys want to email me. It's Kelley@theentrepreneur.com.
And you've got to work out how to spell entrepreneur, because it's different.
How about I send you a link and you can post it with
we will do with the with the Facebook thing. Kelley, lovely to talk with you. Lovely to reconnect with you again. As I say, my last memory is catching a bus to the airport with you from a Colby workshop, and that was many years ago. But I've been following you on Facebook and so on, and watching your success, and I've been really excited. I won't say proud for you, but I've been really excited about. Well, I have been. I've been excited for the progress you've made from when I first met you, and it's really great. And your children are just such an important part of your life, and I know you're just a really great person. And if anyone wants to have a chat with Kelley, please get in touch with her. She's a really good person, and she'll ask you some great questions. So, Kelley, thanks for your time today. Look forward to chatting today.
All right, thanks, Mark. Bye.
Bye.